Hello, so this is a video about understanding Chinese language. We're just going to be understanding the background of what actually is Chinese language, not going to be learning words or something. This is not about learning Chinese, it's about understanding what it is. Then if you wanted to learn it, it would be a lot less intimidating probably. So I'm a native English speaker, started learning Chinese around age 28, didn't have much experience with it at all before then. And before you learn it, it's like, what the hell is that thing? Why their characters look so crazy? Why is the sound so foreign, right? But it's actually not that complicated. So just to start, let's look at some history. So in terms of Chinese language, it's one of the oldest languages that's still used today. The writing system as well, it's one of the first writing systems. I think Sumerians were the first one, but Chinese is still very old, like thousands of years. The writing started from ox and turtle bones. That's what they started writing on. So I'll just give you a little image here. This is an example of the progression of the Chinese writing over time. So you can see the leftmost column here is the modern characters. These are simplified Chinese. And then these oracle bone ones are the same character from their first known depiction. And then, of course, it changed over time. Some of them remained pretty much the same. You can see, look at this mountain one. This is Xiang for mountain. You can see even the first one was almost the same as what it is now. That's kind of interesting. This one here, you might be able to guess from the first one, it kind of loses its obvious form after a while, but it's a pictograph for a bird. So this is a bird. So let's go back here. Yeah, so remember, pretty much all languages start from spoken. Languages start from spoken. And writing systems come later. So what is a writing system? It's an attempt to take our spoken set of language, now how do you spell language, and record it such that people can read it back later. Okay? So sometimes that's not easy to do because spoken rules or sounds may not fit well when translated to another medium. So in English, for example, we learn a lot of grammar rules in school. It's not that those rules were simply decided on, they mostly just came to be by way of speaking. We set the rules to fit the way that we speak. So this is why some rules have a bunch of exceptions or complications. It's not that we designed it to be complicated, it's that we had to because we're not creating a new language, we're just creating a writing system for our language. So the Chinese writing system uses characters called Hanzi. So the way we'd write this is like this. So this character is Han. It means like Han people. It's like a ethnic group that's the most populous one in China. I think it's like more than 90% of people or something. And Zi means characters, like written characters. So you may know that these same characters are used in some other regions as well near to China, such as Korea, Japan, Singapore, whatever. This is because the Chinese created a writing system early and exported this to other cultures. So maybe they did it in exchange for trading, or maybe they just shared it as a technology to establish relationships with other people. Who knows? I mean, it's probably known. I don't know that, though. Doesn't matter. So in any case, this knowledge transfer continues to influence those other locations even now. Places like these ones still use the Chinese characters today. Not too sure about Korea. I think they may use it in names or something. It's definitely very required in Japanese language, at least. So there's also two sets of Chinese characters. And the background for this is in 1949, Mao's PRC took over China from the previous government. So there was a bit of a revolution there. One of their first policies was a language reform. So you may have heard of traditional and simplified Chinese characters. This comes from the language reform, and it's a very modern change. As we saw, it's like 1950s. So it's primarily China that uses the simplified system, since they're the ones that came up with it. Other places typically use traditional. Like Japanese, for example, uses primarily traditional characters. Any that they've taken from Chinese in more modern times, though, there may be a few that are simplified ones, just because they took them after the simplification. There's also a couple in Japanese that are even the ones that they've created themselves. But in any case, we can see it's obviously still an influence on a lot of places' language. So why did China make this reform? The literacy rate at the time was horrible. Essentially, only career scholars, like PhD students of today, had the ability to read, write. Okay. So while it seems this policy worked, given the literacy rate rose drastically, today it's approaching 100%. Those places that use traditional characters also have great modern literacy rates. So it's more likely that, ubiquitous education influenced this more than simplifying the characters. But they're not going to go back now. It's been like this for quite a while now, and they're probably happy that they have a different system anyways, to be honest. So what else do we have here? What actually is the simplification? Well, basically, traditional characters can take quite a lot of strokes to write them. We call it stroke count, as the original method to write is by brush. Reduce stroke count. Original method of writing is by brush, we think. So one of the goals is to reduce the stroke count. Just show you an example here. So how do we write these characters? You can see here, it's not going to do the animation. Anyway, you can see the stroke order here. You start with this one, then this one, then this one, then this one. So this one takes 6 strokes, right? This is the Hao from Ni Hao. You can look at another one, a bit more complicated. This one here says it's 20 strokes. So if you want to write this character, you got to do all this. When you're practiced, it doesn't actually take that long. But those are simplified ones. So when it was in the traditional form, a lot of characters take even a lot more than that. So the downside of simplification, it's not totally a good thing to simplify things because you lose some information, right? You can't take a complex set and reduce it to a simplified set without losing something. So the thing you might lose is you can tell by looking at these characters, most characters are compound characters, and if we simplify some of these compound elements, basically some different elements of the characters, which are called radicals, these other smaller pieces inside them, some different radicals would have been simplified down into basically the same ones in the simplified form. So in traditional form, it might be two different things, and in simplified form, it might be one thing, right? So you lose a little bit there. So let's look at this character, how. So this is the one we just saw from ni hao. So hopefully you know that one. You may notice that it looks like two different pieces squished together, this character, and that's because it is. It's made from nu and zi. So this one means good, by the way. This one means woman. This one can mean child. So this is a compound character made from squishing these two together. So Chinese technically has tens of thousands of characters, but you could consider yourself literate. Let's even fully literate if you know even 2,000 to 3,000. And most of them are going to be compound characters such as this one. So once you get familiar with some of the elements such as these, you can end up combining them into other characters. It makes them much easier to recognize, much more familiar. Even knowing like 1 to 200 could form basic ideas. Maybe even 500 can have simple conversations. So you don't really have to go crazy here. So what actually are these characters? In English, our characters are A, B, C. These are phonetic. This means each letter represents a sound. Sort of. We break the rules a lot. So we can then combine those letters to make compound sounds into words, right? So the benefit of this method is that I could write anything in English and you can read it, even if you don't know what it is. So let's try a word, I shouldn't say it yet. So you should be able to read this word without me saying it, right? If you're a native English speaker, at least. So you probably can understand that it's pronounced neodymium. So how do you know that? If you've never seen the word before, well, you just sound it out by the letters. And you're familiar with different constructs like this neo, right? Like it's all familiar. In fact, you may even know, or may even have an idea what it is. So even if you've never seen this word before, you don't know what it is, you might have an idea. It's a metal. We can guess this based on the ium. So some words in English do have meaning associated with them because they have pieces of the word that have meaning, right? This is a common suffix that we use for elements. So this does come up fairly often in English, but I would say most of the time we do not have these semantic clues in English words. So even if we can read by sound, we don't really know the meaning of the words unless we just know, right? So you still have to just memorize all the words' meaning. That's kind of the only way to know. So in contrast, Chinese characters are semantic. If you've never seen one before, you won't be able to read it by sound and you won't know what it means. So that sounds worse, but it's easier to guess what it means. So it also means that each character has a direct meaning. So every time you see that character, it's always going to mean the same thing. Yeah, and then where are we here? So going back to the how example, this one here. Compound characters often retain some of the meaning of their parts. In these left-right compounds, as opposed to top-bottom placement of the parts. So we could see, these two characters side by side, left and right. The left component is typically tied to the meaning. So that would mean, in this example, our how character, which means good, is connected to this one, which means woman. So women are good. That's the implication here. So there's a lot more concrete examples than that, but often they are kind of more subtle like this one. As a concrete example, we can look at these two. More concrete example. So this character, Cao, means grass. This one, Hua, means flower. And you can see, what do they share? They share this top radical here, the little line with two lines through it. So this is the grass radical. If you see a character with this on top, the character likely has something to do with, plants. So this means that even though we don't know anything by looking at a character that we don't recognize, we can still guess at the meaning based on context. Sometimes you can even guess the sound as well, because sometimes the right side component in this format can be related to the sound. This means a compound character may have the same sound as that component, or a similar sound, but sometimes not similar at all. So it's not that useful. A lot of the time, you can't really guess the sound, but you can guess the meaning. This one is more reliable. So as you get more, the general point is, as you get more familiar with parts of characters, it gets easier to read and understand them. So in any case, if you're just interested in learning for fun, you don't even need to learn to read or write. But I think understanding the concept of how characters work is a key fundamental. This would help you to understand the language, even if you're not looking at reading or writing. We'll see why it's kind of key to that in a little bit here. So going back to our 1950s language reform, another key implementation was pinyin. Pinyin is a carefully created, standardized method of writing Chinese using our familiar alphabet. This way, we can easily read anything in Chinese. Negative is, looking at pinyin, you lose the semantic element. So you wouldn't be able to for sure know what a given thing means without seeing the character itself. Although you can often guess based on the context as if it's not a standalone word. So, when looking at pinyin, important to understand it's not designed to conform to English. It's still very much a Chinese writing system, just using the English alphabet, okay? So, in my opinion, they did an excellent job at making sure that pinyin writing looks correct on a page, even to English speakers. So, you'll see once we start seeing some of them, but the way that they're written kind of makes sense. It doesn't look all that foreign. So the catch will be that you won't be familiar with the way to pronounce some sounds, as the pronunciation is not the same way we'd say it in English. Just need to become familiar with the pinyin system, though, and it gets easy. All right. A great example is the surname Wang. It means king. So this is the most common surname in China. Makes up over 7% of the population, actually. It's kind of crazy. In English, many people will call them Wang. So when you come here, if your name is this, everyone's going to call you Wang. So you may know that some people, when they come to, when they immigrate, will choose to write their name as Wang. And that's because that's how you pronounce this. So if somebody writes their name like this very well may be their Chinese surname. And that's because this way people won't mispronounce it so much. This is actually not a valid pinyin writing. There's no character that this means. So Wang should be written like this in pinyin. So the point is, don't try to fit, when you read pinyin like this, don't try to fit it into your English interpretation, because you have to learn the pinyin interpretation. Pinyin mostly here to help us with sounds, given that the Hanzi don't help much with that at all. Going back to the idea that language starts as spoken. The Chinese made a convenient system to accommodate their speech, at least in Mandarin Chinese. So Mandarin Chinese is the one that was pushed as a standard in 1950s as well. There's a lot of other dialects, but we don't care about those for the purpose of this. So basically, how this works is you can separate Chinese sounds into initials and finals. Okay? Initials are usually one or two consonants at the beginning of a sound. Finals are usually 0 to 3 letters at the end of a sound. So we saw with Wang, the W here is the initial, Ang is the final. We can then make a table showing which combinations of these are allowed. So allowed just means they exist, right? Because we're not making a written language, we're just writing down how we speak the language. So I think this part helps to dispel a lot of the mystique. In English, let's say we have around 44 unique sounds from 26 letters, although there's like 200 ways to spell those sounds using our letters. so we make it nice and complicated. Mandarin Chinese has around 400 unique sounds from their tens of thousands of characters. Although you won't really hear a lot of those sounds most of the time. A lot of them are not common. Especially as a beginner, you may never hear them even. So you may understand that if there's only 400 sounds and tens of thousands of characters, yes, many characters share sounds with many others. So there's a lot of homophones. Now, let's look at the table. Here it is. I think this makes it look a lot less intimidating here. So here's the Chinese sounds. These are the sounds that are used in Mandarin Chinese. It's really not that complicated. This column here shows our finals, and this row here shows our initials. So, for example, anything starts with Z in pinyin, then we go Z, I, Z, za, zai, zan, zang, zao, z, zai, zan, zang, right? Basically, anywhere where it's blank, it's not a valid sound in Chinese. So, you know, a lot of these you'll never even hear. Like, I've never heard this before. Don't know what that is. I'm sure there must be a couple of characters that use it, but I've never seen it myself. Same for a lot of these, like this one as well. Never seen that before. But the general idea is each of these initials are always going to be pronounced the same. So the starting part always the same throughout every time you see it. Same with the finals. Every time I see the final an, it's always an, ban, pan, man, fan, dan, tan, nan, right? It's going to be the same. So the amount of things you have to learn is actually not that much because you very quickly understand how the sounds work. I think pinyin itself you could learn in like a day even. Just going through the sounds, hearing how each one sounds, and then you can apply it to all the other ones as well. Another good way to practice this kind of thing would be if there's any Chinese songs you like, you can follow along the pinyin lyrics, and you'd learn how each one sounds very quickly that way. Yeah, so each initial and final always pronounced the same. You just combine them. Pretty simple. So if there are so many homophones, though, how do we differentiate them? Right? If there's like 10 different characters that sound like Wang, how do we know which one it is? Well, that's where the concept of tones comes in. Even considering tones, there are still a ton of true homophones. Like, for example, two different Wangs with the same tone, for example, would be a complete homophone rather than just a close one. But even then, it's still generally easy to differentiate based on the context. For example, in a given sentence, if you hear someone say that word, only one version or only one character with that sound will be appropriate in that place. So this is generally true. Of course, every now and then you'd come into an ambiguous statement, but the same is true of English or any language. Okay, so in Mandarin, there are 4 or 5 tones, depending how you think about it. So the first one is an accent like this. The second one is an accent that looks like this. The third one is an accent that looks like this. And the fourth one is an accent that looks like that, right? And then fifth would be neutral. So how these work, I'm not an expert at this. This is a part that's kind of a struggle for me as well. But basically, this tone would be like Wang, this one would be Wang, this one would be Wang, this one would be Wang. So the accent itself kind of dictates how it flows. So this is kind of a flat one, this is a rising one, this is one that goes down and then up, and this is one that just goes down. And any of the sounds that we've seen here, you could put each of those tones on each one. So that's where the 400 comes from. Or actually, I think there's even more than that if you apply the tones. But anyways, point is each sound can have the tones applied to it. So the way, let's look at this as an example. You can see here, if you use Google Translate, it writes the actual pinyin. So the official way of writing pinyin would include the tone marker. You can see here the tone marker usually goes on, I think, the leftmost vowel. You can see this one has the upper, the second tone there. And then let me write another one as an example. Oops, where's Chinese? Let's try this one. Yeah, you can see this is also pronounced Wang, but the tone here is different. That's the 4th tone. Where are we at now? So how to learn the tones? Well, that's something you kind of just have to learn. It's a memorization thing. You could do this like this here.
Wang Wang.
You can see it. Google will help me out. Alternatively, just hear the language more. As you hear it, you'll become familiar with it. In the end, ooh, that's Chinese. In the end, don't worry too much about tones. If you're speaking a full sentence and get the tones a bit wrong, 95% of the time, people will immediately understand you anyways, since the base pronunciation is still right. Context makes it obvious, right? So our brain does the filling in there. You will sound like a second language speaker, of course, but that's because you are, right? Maybe that'll help you empathize with English as a second language speakers as they struggle to speak English. So at this point, let's talk about, so Chinese is actually surprisingly similar to English. I mean this in terms of grammar and sentence structure / word order. So you'll find, once you learn some basics, to make a Chinese sentence, you can frequently just word for word translate it from English, and it will be right or mostly right. It's because the word order is very similar. In contrast, if you ever learn Japanese, holy crap, that's completely different word order than and grammar than English. So you have to learn everything from scratch. But with Chinese, you just learn the words and you put them together in a sentence, and that's it. It just kind of works. So it's a nice feature. One thing that's funny is I'd say it's easier for English natives to learn Chinese than the opposite. This is because the above is true for English to Chinese, but more complex for Chinese to English. For example, in English, we have plenty of obnoxious grammar words like the. Chinese doesn't have that. That's why if you speak to a native Chinese and they sound very much like a second language speaker in English, it's because they aren't using enough the or other words like that. So they're just struggling to find out where to add these things because this concept doesn't exist in Chinese. Of course, if we convert from English to Chinese, we can just ignore these. You don't have to worry about translating the because you just don't. You just skip it. So the other way around, they have to learn where this is appropriate, for example. Let's also touch on Chinese names to demystify these. So if you look at Chinese names and you're not familiar, you may think, what the heck? It looks complicated. I don't know how to say that. You may have noticed from the pinyin table earlier that Chinese sounds, though, are pretty much all one syllable long. Any single Chinese character will be made up of only one sound. So anytime we see a character like this, it's never a compound sound. You can't there's no character that's bang bao, right? It's either bang or it's bao. There's no compound sounds. Each character is one sound and one meaning. And additionally, Chinese surnames are usually just one character long, sometimes two. Chinese given names are one or two characters long. So this means Chinese names are all are pretty short and easy to say, actually. If you just learn the basics of pinyin pronunciation, you'll say any Chinese name correctly easily. Examples: Zhang Wei, right? That's very easy to say. Zhang Wei. That's this guy's name. Here's another one. This one would have 3 characters. Li Wenliang, right? So I guess the pinyin here gives it away because I put a space, but this would be the surname, this would be the given name. So, and you can, if you're starting to understand a little bit, hopefully you can guess where's the separation in this between these 2 characters, right? Each one is one syllable with an initial and a final. It's Wen, Liang. Those are the 2 characters. And of course, in Chinese, the surname comes first if we're writing it in Chinese. Of course, if you're seeing a name here, then it would come last, of course. So I think that's pretty much it for a beginning understanding of what this is. Hopefully this helped you get a basic idea of what the hell is Chinese language and show that it's not really all that complicated. Yeah, so good luck.